Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Charlene and today I'm going to be doing the reader profile tag. I was tagged to do this video by Annie from Obscure Book Adventures, and it was originally created by Hillary from Book Bustle, and I will be leaving both of their channels linked down in the description below. So this tag is based on your preferences as a reader, things that you're reading, etc. And there are 10 questions in total, and I have not gone over these ahead of time, so this should be interesting. Question number 1 is, what makes a good book? Oh, where do we start that one? So I think one of the first things that makes a book good, in my opinion, is that the characters are engaging. They don't need to be relatable. They don't even need to be likable. But I need to care about what is going on with the characters, what their goals are, and be engaged with them throughout the story, through the narration, through their actions, etc. If I'm not engaged with a character, if I don't care about what's happening, the book isn't good, because it's not going to draw me into the story and it's not going to keep me reading. The other thing is that I like to feel immersed in the story and in where the story takes place. So having details and descriptions that really put me into the story, really make me feel like I'm there with the character, also makes a really good book for me. One book that is a good example of this is Book Scavenger by Jennifer Chambliss Bertman. This book takes place in San Francisco. I have never been to San Francisco. I lived in California for 13 years, but I've never been there. But I felt like I was in San Francisco in this book, because there are just a lot of descriptions sprinkled throughout the book in which she refers to different streets, different types of buildings, specific businesses and buildings, different ways that things look or smell or sound. She talks about all of the different hills, etc. And I just really felt like I was there while reading this book. And there's not pages and pages of descriptions, because this is a middle grade book. You would lose a middle grade reader if you did that. But there's just enough sprinkled throughout every chapter to really root you in the city where it takes place. The opposite of that, in my opinion, is Stormfront by Jim Butcher. This book takes place in Chicago. This is the first of the Dresden Files books. It takes place in Chicago. And I saw a reviewer make a comment soon after I read the book in which they said, it feels like this book could have taken place in any big city in the US. And I realized they were right, because there's really nothing specifically anchoring this story to Chicago. On occasion, a street might get named, or a building every once in a great while specifically gets mentioned. But that's really it. And so you don't feel like you're in Chicago. You just feel like you're in generic city. So there are ways to do it without completely drowning the reader in description. Although sometimes when the reader gets drowned in description, it doesn't bother me either. But there are also ways to do it without doing that and still keep the reader immersed in the story and feeling like they're there, that they are seeing and hearing and feeling what the character is. Question number 2 is, what are you currently reading? Oh, that's not a short list. So, fiction-wise, I'm currently reading The Tale of Genji. I didn't bring any of these books out with me, so you just get pictures. I'm reading Words of Radiance by Brandon Sanderson. I just started Evangeline by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, which is a collection of poems. I think that's all I'm reading fiction-wise at the moment. I'm planning to start a couple other books soon, but I think those are the only ones I'm currently reading. Non-fiction-wise, I'm reading Because Internet by Gretchen McCulloch, I think is how her name is said. He Is Enough by Asharita Chuchu. And yes, I checked how to pronounce that. That is the correct pronunciation. Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis, and The Message of the Prophets by J. Daniel Hayes. I hope I didn't miss anything, but I think that's it. That's a long enough list anyway. Question number 3 is, what is the last book you did not finish and why? I'm assuming this means the last book you DNF'd, not started reading, put down, and just didn't get back to. So the last book I didn't finish was Hotel Moscow by Talia Carner. And I talked about this one in my May wrap-up. The main reasons why I didn't finish this one were because the characters felt very flat. There was a pretty graphic essay scene that took up quite a bit of one chapter. I feel like I had and there was a romance in there that just felt very forced and just kind of came out of nowhere. So there are things about the story that just weren't that engaging to me, basically. And then scenes in there that I just didn't want to read. Question number 4 is, what obscure book do you wish other people would read? I'm not sure. I don't feel like I read a lot of obscure books. I also feel like the one or two that are coming to mind, they're not obscure, they're just not as well known because they're self-published. You know what, let's just go with it. So this one is self-published, which is why I don't really hear people talk about it, but that is the Raven vs. Crow series by Amy Alward. And this is actually the second book in the series because I'm currently loaning the first book out to someone. But the first book is called Immolation, and it's the only one that I've read so far. I haven't gotten to this book yet. But this series does something that we don't see a lot of fantasy doing, and that is the main character is older, and the romance is very light. And I know romantasy is becoming a really big thing right now, but I know there was a time when a lot of people were talking about wanting less romance in their fantasy books, and I'm assuming those readers are still out there, myself included. So I think someone would probably be interested in this series. But in the first book, Leonore is a woman who is in her 40s. I don't remember her exact age now, but she's in her 40s. She used to live on the mainland in this world, and at some point left behind the life she had been leading, moved to an island, and decided to settle down. Got married, had a family, left her past behind her. But now her past seems to have caught up with her. She comes home one day, her house is engulfed in flames, her family is gone, like gone. And she sets out to seek vengeance on the people who killed her family. And it seems that the people who are behind this are from her past. Like I said, it has an older main character. Romance is very light in this. She is traveling with another person who is, I think, either in his late teens or very early 20s. So there is just a little bit of romance with his character, but not a whole lot. And I don't know, this one was just, it was a lot different than a lot of fantasy I've read. And I really enjoyed the first book. I do want to get to the second book still. I just unfortunately haven't yet. But I feel like this is a type of fantasy that there probably are other readers out there who would be interested in it. They just may not have heard of it yet. So it is self-published. I will leave it linked down in the description below to where you can find it on Amazon. But I would recommend it. I can't recommend past the first book, unfortunately, but I recommend it. All right, question number 5 is, what is the longest book you have read? And that one's not even difficult. Les Mis by Victor Hugo. And this is a chunky book. It's 1,263 pages. And yes, I know the exact number without looking because it's the longest book I've read. And I've memorized that number. Also, this is the Word Cloud Classics edition, and the font is tiny. So, now, this is out of fiction books. The longest book I've actually read is the Bible, but out of fiction books, this is the longest one by far. Question number 6 is, if you could have a dinner party with 5 fictional characters, who would they be? Where do you begin with that one? Okay, that took a while to figure out, but I decided to go with all fantasy characters because fantasy is what I read the most of, so I felt like it gave me the widest variety of characters to choose from and not have to worry about mixing in a whole bunch of stuff. The first character I'm going to go with is Jonathan Strange from Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. Of the 2 main characters, I liked Jonathan Strange's character more, and I think he would be more fun to have at a dinner party. I'm not sure I'd want Mr. Norrell at a dinner party. He's a little cranky. And then Lawrence from the Temeraire series. I think he and Jonathan Strange could probably have some interesting conversations. They were both involved in wars, just one from a military perspective and one from a magical perspective. But I think the conversations could be interesting. And then Tian from the Millennium's Rule series. Again, he's kind of been involved in war as well, but in a very different capacity. And I think some of the abilities that he have could be very interesting, or what he could talk about would be very interesting. Make good conversation. It's 1, 2, 3. Who did I miss? Oh. Pull this one off the shelf because I don't own the first book. Gotta make sure I get the right one. Wax from Wax and Wayne. I don't want to say Wayne when I mean Wax. Wax from Wax and Wayne. Wax is an interesting character. He's a lot of fun, but he actually has some restraint, unlike Wayne, and he actually has decent manners, so I think he would be a better one to have as a dinner guest than Wayne. And then I'm going to go with Farius, I think is how you say her name, from the Spellslinger series. Between the things that Wax could probably do with his magic and the things that Farius does with cards, we could have some entertainment at the table as well. Question number 7 is list 5 books that you would want to have with you if you were stranded on a deserted island. Well, book number 1 is the Bible. I want to be able to read my Bible even if I'm on a deserted island. Book number 2, I feel like I had a specific book I listed somewhere, but I can't find it if I did. I want a book on survival. Like what plants are safe to eat, what plants are not safe to eat, what are good to use for medicinal purposes, how to clean the water so it's safe to drink, etc. I want to know how to survive on this island if I can't get off of it. Yes, I could go with I don't remember which of the Phelps twins said it, but one of the ones that played the Weasley twins in the Harry Potter movies. A book on
how to build a raft.
But I'll just go with a book on survival instead. And then I think beyond that, I want 3 books that are quite chunky. Because if I have a lot of time to kill, I want a bigger book. I don't want to take 3 other books that are small, and I'm going to be done with them in a couple days, and then all I'm left with are the other 2 books, or rereading the short books over and over and over again. So I think one of the books I would bring is The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. I haven't read this one yet, but I've heard good things about it, and this one could take a while. I think this one is 1100 something. Nope, not quite. 1055. So 1055 pages. So it would still take a while. Not quite as long, but it would still take a while. This one might be a little bit too on the nose, but We the Drowned by Karsten Jensen. Again, I haven't read this one. Now, Alexandre Dumas, I know I like his books. I've read 3 of his other books. So I know I like him. I don't know about Karsten Jensen, but this is a Danish classic, if I remember right. Well, not classic, but modern classic. Yes, the author's from Denmark. But this is also a decently chunky book, and clearly it has something to do with the sea, so I think that would be fitting. And if I'm looking at this correctly, it's 675 pages, so it looks almost as chunky as The Count of Monte Cristo, but it's really not. Then do I want to reread or do I want a new book? Okay, this one's not quite as chunky. This one's not even 500 pages. But whereas the other books are, I'm trying to find out how long this book actually is. 467 pages. So it's a shorter book, but I feel like all of the other books are fairly serious. So this would give me something a little bit lighter, and that is A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court by Mark Twain. I love this book. I like Arthurian legend. I really enjoyed what he did with the story. So I would take this with me. So when I want something a little less serious, a little more humorous, I have something else I can go to. Question number 8. I want my coffee back. Question number 8 is, what is one book that you could not put down? And the first book that comes to mind, this one, I'm not saying it's the only book I couldn't put down, but it's just the first one that comes to mind, is The Line Between by Tosca Lee. This is a Christian thriller, I guess would be a good way to put it. It follows a character named Winter, who is cast out of a cult. But when she leaves, she discovers that a pandemic has started, and this was published in, I believe, 2019. So pre-COVID, but yeah. So there's a pandemic, and I can't remember if it's like antibodies, whatever is needed to try to create a vaccine. There's someone who's trying to get it into the hands of someone who will exploit the US. So she ends up trying to get it where it needs to go and not to the people that will exploit them. The only part I didn't care for in this book was literally the fact that she was kicked out of a cult, because I feel like that's not something cults do. I could be wrong about that. Maybe there are some that will kick people out, but I feel like that's really not a thing. And unfortunately, the plot kind of hinged on her being kicked out, not just running away. But other than that, I couldn't put the book down. I was hooked from the beginning, and I feel like I read it straight through. I know it took a few days because I just couldn't read that much in one day, but I feel like I read it straight through. Question number 9 is, list 5 books or authors that you will never read. And I have a feeling this is supposed to be 5 books or authors you haven't read, that you have no intentions of reading. But sitting here thinking through it, I'm struggling to come up with authors that I haven't read that I have no intention of reading. So I know one author I don't plan to ever read is Sarah J. Maas. I know Throne of Glass series and A Court of Thorns and Roses have both been really popular series, but I personally have no interest in her books. One book that I don't plan to pick up is The Sword of Kaigen by M.L. Wong. And the main reason for this one is because so many people talk about it being a standalone. And to some extent, it's a standalone, but it's also set within a bigger world that she started writing books in, and as far as I understand, has no intention of writing more books in that particular series. So, like, it might be a standalone, but it's still part of this bigger series that's now probably going to be incomplete. So I don't really want to pick up that book only to not be able to read the rest of the other series. Another one is Haruki Murakami, and mostly because I have heard some very strange things when it comes to his books and have no desire to read them myself. Colleen Hoover is another one I've heard a lot of people talk about. I don't know if she's as popular as she used to be, but I know she was for a while, and I really have no intention of picking up any of her books. And the last one I'll go with is Rebecca Yarros. Again, I know Fourth Wing has been really popular lately, but it just doesn't sound like a series I'm going to be interested in. And I don't know if I'd be interested in any of her other books either. And question number 10 is, if you were to write a book, what would it be about? I'm feeling a little called out here. I do like to write. And at one point I was working to try to get a novel finished and hopefully actually get it published. However, different things happened. It didn't work out, and I've struggled to get back into it. I've had ideas for fantasy novels. I've had ideas for historical fiction. I've had ideas for contemporary fiction. I don't know. It would just depend on what I decided to pursue, ultimately. There are so many ideas rattling around in my brain, but I don't have the time to get them from brain to fingertips to computer, so I don't know. All right, and then the last part of this is to tag other people to do this video. I can honestly say I have not seen this video yet, and the original video was only posted 3 months ago, so this probably hasn't quite made its rounds yet, but I will have people linked down in the description below. and I would love to see you guys do this tag because I'm curious about your answers. So that is all I have for you today. Thank you for watching this video. I will have the questions in the description below, so if you want to answer the questions in the comments, please feel free to do so. I hope you are having a wonderful day, and I'll see you later.